record this. All right, so we're going to start the recording. People will filter in as they come. I'm going to go into speaker view and keep myself pinned on the here so that later for the recording, they're able to see this. So honestly, starting the podcast is probably going to be one of the most important things that we should do that isn't really going to be mentioned too often. It's interesting, Tanisha just came back from the mastermind, and Pace and Steve Trang were talking about this. And if we start looking at the individuals in our industry, across all industries, you see there's a common trait, right? And that's they are building a brand. They're getting very public. We are moving into a day and age where if you are not getting loud, if you're not getting in front of people, you're losing money. Like, you're actually losing money because your brand is going to make more money for you than your business ever will. Because if I asked any of you, how many of you would like to do some real estate deals with Pace Morby? Most people would raise their hand. How many of you would like to do a deal with Grant Cardone? Even if you don't like the guy, you'll probably raise your hand because you understand the leverage that you would get from associating yourself with that individual, because they have a brand, they have clout, they have a following. How did they establish that? They established it through utilizing social media. One of the best ways, because everyone's always like, all right, I understand, but how do I create content? Right? I'm not that outgoing. I'm not this person. I'm not that person. Cool. Neither am I. I don't think I'm like really like the social media, YouTube, get in your face, super excited all the time. That's not really my go-to. If you show up at the house in the morning, well, that's a lie. In the morning, I think get pretty excited. But if you show up at random times, like you'll see, like I do just want to go sit in the backyard and look at the clouds and be quiet and not say a word. Like I can sit next to you for an hour and genuinely not speak if we're just out enjoying nature or something along that nature, along that lines. So I learned to cultivate, what my own skill set was, which is I do enjoy talking to people. I enjoy having those higher level conversations. And a podcast is the perfect platform to do exactly that. So the podcast is so crazy important, and here's why. It allows you to make content out of what would just normally be a conversation you were going to have anyway. Point in case, Tanisha and I wanted to learn about what she learned the first time she went to Arizona and connected with Pace at the premiere and wanted to hear her takeaways. I was planning on just giving her a call and just having a private conversation with her just because I wanted to know. But then I was like, hey, are you game to get on Instagram Live? And why don't we just have the same conversation we're already going to have? Why don't we just have it on IG Live? And then we did that. So people were able to tune in on Instagram. People watched us talk and just have a conversation, which ended up turning into a podcast episode because I took that same content, just pulled out the MP3 audio of it and put it on. And people started reaching out to me. And Tanisha, correct me if I'm wrong, people started reaching out to you from having had listened to that episode. What would have been a private conversation led to an opportunity because all you did was you recorded it and you put it out there for people to find. Like, the power of this has been insane. I have personally connected with a lot of individuals. My network has grown like crazy. I've had deals and opportunities come to me. I've made money from my podcast. I have raised private money from my podcast. My podcast has done a lot for me. I'm still in a place where I'm beginning my business, right? So let's look at a few things. When it comes to getting a podcast started, and I actually, I'm going to figure out about how to get this to you all. For everyone that's on here, I'm going to figure out a way to get your guys' emails at the end, because I actually, a little while back, wrote a book. No joke, I wrote an ebook on how to start a podcast because I was getting this question so often. I was like, why don't I just write a book? So I'm going to figure out, like, I have all the text. I'll figure out a way to get it to you guys so you can actually read this. But as I wrote the book, I really started to think, how do we go from absolutely nothing to building something out? And we start off with this. Why are you doing a podcast? So if any of you are note takers, I would actually write this part down. Like, why are you doing a podcast? That's the very first question you need to ask yourself. because with this question, you will actually frame everything else. This is such a key point to how the rest of everything goes. So when I started Into the Mind, for example, I started that podcast for this reason. And I'm going to be totally frank. I was brand new to real estate investing. I had nobody to talk to about it. And I saw a lot of the mentors and gurus out there that I wanted to connect with who had very high ticket prices to get some of their time. I did not want to pay for their time. So I figured if I have a podcast, I have an excuse to go take an hour of their time and they can't charge me because I'm going to bring value to them. That was my selfish reason. Now, my unselfish reason, which is equally as important, if not more important, truly, I also have this desire in me to want to help and grow other people. And I like to talk, as most of you who may know me, you do know I like to talk, and I like to share advice. However, it's really important for me that when I share the advice and I like coach, if you will, I come from a place of experience. I learned this from my days of parkour coaching, that I only ever liked to teach the movements that I performed myself. Although I understood the technicalities of how to do the other moves, I never quite felt comfortable teaching someone how to triple backflip if I've only ever doubled, right? And I could tell them like, hey, this is the timing, but I couldn't tell you this is how it's going to feel. I couldn't actually pull that out for them. So what I really wanted with my podcast was to go and get advice for myself and also know that this advice was going to be valuable to others, but recognize that it's going to be received much better when it's coming directly from the source. So instead of me going and getting advice from Pace and then taking that advice and relaying it over to Dan, I could just go and have the conversation with Pace and ask the question that both Dan and I want to know the answer to, and let Pace give both of us the answer. So I'm able to spread the value across more people. So that was truly, those were the two major reasons for me wanting to have a podcast. It was to get valuable information out to people, right? While still selfishly being connected to them receiving it, right? I get to kind of be a part of that situation, be a part of that value giving. And then for me personally, I'm able to cultivate these relationships and connections and learn from those who are much further along than me. So now that I understand my why, right? Why am I starting this podcast? I have the fuel to go out and begin to build, right? It's almost like I'm starting with the end in mind. So with that being the case, it's from there, you have to think about who is the podcast for? Because again, this is going to help shape the podcast. Because at the end of this, I want you to understand everything. Like there should be no questions left on how do I start my podcast. By the time we're done with this, you're going to understand how to create the podcast, how to go out and produce it, what equipment you need, where to host it, what you should talk about, who you should talk for. So I'm going to cover everything from A to Z. So who is the podcast for? So you figured out why you're doing it. Now we got to think about who is it for? Who is your target audience, your ideal customer? Most of us are in real estate. I think just about everyone came in here from Sub2 tonight or some form of real estate. You know that your ideal customer is a motivated seller. You don't want Joe and Sally who are selling their brand new 2019 fully updated and renovated home that they just dumped $100,000 cash into putting a hot tub in the backyard. You don't want to even look at that house. That's not your ideal customer, right? We got to think about who our ideal listener is for the podcast. So again, when I thought about myself and I thought about Into the Mind, who was my ideal client? Like, what did my client avatar look like? My client avatar didn't necessarily have an age, right? My ideal client had a mindset. There was a certain type of person, a certain type of individual I was looking to resonate with that inside of them, which is why you'll see my listeners range in all ages. They come from all shapes and walks of life. I was looking for the person very specifically who was beginning their entrepreneurial path. They'd already taken some time to start. They still hadn't quite found a tribe that they're fully locked into yet. And they were beginning to feel like they were alone on this journey and that they were facing struggles that were exceptional to them. that no one else had faced struggles before. They were getting to that point. And it was at that point, they were getting to like that make or break point where they were starting to think there was something wrong with them. And that's who I wanted to make the podcast for. It's like, okay, I need that person. I need that entrepreneur who is out there, who's growing, who's almost about to give up because, again, like they feel like, what's wrong with me? Why haven't I made this work yet? Why was I looking for that person? Because I was that person. Because on some days I still am that person. So I needed something that was just as much for me. It was solving my own problem as it is for the listener. So why do I care about who's listening? Because it allows me to then guide the conversation, guides the question. It helps me figure out what I'm going to talk about. By knowing who my listener is going to be, I now start to get a better sense of what sort of content I'm going to be creating on the podcast so that when people come and listen, I know for a fact, I'm very confident that if you listen to one of my episodes, you're going to continue to listen to more because I've served you with value. I came with a purpose. I came with an intention. I didn't just start recording and said, whatever happens, happens. I got very intentional about what I wanted to release and what problem I wanted to solve. Because here's the truth. I have a lot of episodes that are recorded that will never see the light of day. Because after I recorded those episodes with those guests, I realized this wasn't valuable to my who's. This wasn't valuable for the people I was looking to serve. And although another group may find it valuable, not on this podcast because it's not serving the intention. It's not fitting the why and the who. So that's very important. So number one, we want to know why are we doing the podcast? Number two, we want to know who is the podcast for? Number three, we want to ask ourselves, why should they listen? And just in case you guys wonder why I'm looking down, like again, this is like literally like the chapters in the book where I actually break this down even more. What up, Luciano?
What up?
So why should they listen? You guys can come in if you want.
Huh?
You guys are free to come in.
As soon as you understand the desk.
Oh shoot! I took over Luciano's like room without his permission.
Gave him an off.
Yeah.
Built him a whole office and steals mine.
You had the lights, man. You had like the official podcast setup. We got to be inside here. So number three is why should they listen? Right? It's super important to understand why are they listening to your podcast, and they're going to be listening because you're going to be providing value. You're going to be solving. Peace out, guys. You're going to be solving a problem for them. That is really important that you recognize. They're listening because you are bringing them value, you're solving a problem, and you're putting conversation and content that they have struggles getting, right? And maybe your people have a different reason. You need to be in touch with that. You need to understand why do they keep coming back? What are they in tune with? And here's the thing. You don't need to guess. This is the beautiful thing about what we have with the social media, with the internet. How many of you just show up with like either virtual hands or you can raise your hand in real life? How many of you, if you follow me on Instagram, have ever seen me do a poll, right? Like I'll make something, it'll be a poll of like yes or no, hey, do you like this logo better? Hey, should I talk about this topic? Or I make a question in my Instagram. Hey, what should we talk about next? Or maybe you've seen on Facebook. I actually did this on my Facebook post. I made a post on Facebook. Let's see if I can actually find it. I made a post on the Subtube page where I asked people what are challenges that they're going through with their mindset. So I asked them what they wanted to hear. So now why should they listen? It's because I'm answering their questions. So it's going to be really, really important that you recognize what you're doing. So I'm pulling it up right now, if I can. I can't find it. I should have had this ready for you all so you can see, but you're going to start to notice as you look at things I do on social media, you're going to start to see I'm going to be asking certain questions. I'm going to be doing certain things, and it's feeding back into my why. It's feeding back into my who's, and it's feeding back into, again, why are they caring? Why should they listen? I'm talking directly to somebody. Every single time I have a podcast, it is like there's someone else sitting to the side of me, and I'm making this directly for this person. And when you get this later, when I send this out to you, you're going to see I even talk about, in the beginning, I would actually create a fake person. Back when I used to do my podcast by me alone, I would create a fake person, right? And I would talk to that person. So I would have a direct conversation. I would give that person direct advice. So it always feels like a conversation. So knowing all of this, right now we've figured out, cool, we know why we're creating the podcast. We know who the podcast is for, and we know why they should listen to us. These three things are important. Now we want to understand the naming of the podcast. This, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very important. When you name your podcast, please do not name it Mitch's podcast, Rob's podcast, Carolyn's podcast. Unless you already have a massive following and you've got some really strong clout, do not name your podcast your name podcast. The reason being, think about why you're putting it out on social media. You want people to find it. You want people, I already have my podcast name. I love that. You want people to find it. You want people to the money podcast. I love that. Don't name it Rob. I love this, guys. So you want people to find your podcast, and more so when they find it, you want them to click on it and listen to it. If you're scrolling through, what do we stop for, right? We stop for, oh, the real estate investing podcast, mobile home university, right? We have a sense of what they're about to be talking about. What the heck is Rob's podcast going to be talking about? I have no clue. Why would I ever feel inclined to click on that? Right? It's not, unless it's Beyonce's podcast, Jay-Z's podcast, right? I would maybe Oprah's podcast. I might click on those, right? Because those people already have clout. They have a following that comes with that name. If you don't have that clout already, name it something that ties in to what your podcast will most likely be talking about. Hence, Into the Mind. What do I talk about in all of my episodes? Everything always comes back to mindset. Almost every single episode rolls back to mindset. Hence the name Into the Mind. We really want to think of a name that's going to give people some sort of hint, and it's going to get them to be a little bit curious to go click on it. And with that being the case as well, your episodes, if you choose to have guests on your episodes and your guests carry more clout than you do, use their name in naming the episode, right? You'll see some of my episodes are like Cody Barton, how he went to 0 to a millionaire by the age of 26. I start off with his name because people are going to search his name more than they search my name right now. Right? Steve Chang, like you'll notice all my episodes start off with my guest's name. Because also when your guests come on your show, this is a little hidden, a little trick to get more people viewing. People are going to search for your guest first. Leverage their name to get people to your show. Once they come in, if you have good content, they will stay. But if they can't find you, it doesn't matter how good you are. It's like being the best book that no one ever read. How good is it really if no one ever read it? You need to get eyeballs. You need to get ears on your podcast, on your content. Get people to come in. So from there, you want to figure out how long your episodes should be. Now, this is going to be personal choice. There is no right or wrong answer here. And I really do mean this. There are podcasts where the episodes are 10 to 12 minutes long. There are podcasts where the episodes are 3 hours long. No joke. Go listen to Jocko Willink. He literally has 3-hour-long podcasts, almost all of them, because he's ex-military and he brings on a bunch of war vets. And people love it because he figured out who his who is. So he serves his who, he serves his why. Somebody had something? I thought someone said something. So because he's serving his who's, he's serving his why, people, later up, people stay tuned in. So figure out how long you want your episodes to be and try to stick to that length of time. Your audience likes consistency. Has anyone here ever watched like a television show or like a series where the episodes would drop like every Friday? Maybe some of you are watching Triple Digit Flip right now, where you look forward to the premiere Sunday service with Pace, right? You look forward to each Sunday. You know, wholesale hotline's coming out at 5 p.m. on Mondays, right? You know the time. You get accustomed, and you know they're only going to hold me here for about 1 hour, and I'm going to get my day back. So you know how long you're going to be in. You know when to expect it. It's important that you begin to give that to your audience as well. So if anyone follows my podcast, they know that they can get it at 6 a.m. on a Monday morning to start off their work week, right? Like I put it out there, and I've had people reach out to me and they're like, yo, like, I love the time it comes out because it starts my work week off right. And I will listen to it while I'm going to the gym first thing Monday morning. And if I don't drop it, people are like, yo, what happened to the episode? Like I've had people reach out to me and just say like, yo, where's the episode at? Because you've been able to get them dialed in, and they know, okay, with Marlon, I could typically expect an episode from anywhere 50 to 70 minutes, right? They can pretty much always expect that length of time. When I make an episode that's shorter than that, what I do is I typically will call it a bonus episode. So some of you might have seen like my last 3 episodes had the tag bonus next to it because they were little 10 to 12 minute episodes. So you're able to mix it up, but in the very beginning, start with a length of time that you want to go for. That's going to help you structure your conversations. It's going to help you structure your episodes. It's going to help your audience get accustomed to your tone, your voice. They're going to get accustomed to your schedule, which is what you want to do. You want to train them. No worries, Joseph. Not a problem at all, bro. Dude, it was good seeing you at dinner tonight. So you want to get accustomed to that. From that point, you're going to also lock in on a schedule that you can be consistent with. The goal, wait, what was that question there? And if, by the way, if anyone has a question, please stop me. Like, please just be like, yo, like, let's, because if you have that question, odds are somebody else has that exact same question. So please, if you have a question, stop me. You can throw it in the group chat, or you just straight up unmute yourself and just be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. I want it to be a conversation. So are 30 to 40 minute episodes too long? No. As long as you're providing value for those 30 to 40 minutes. Right? If you're talking for 30 or 40 minutes about absolutely nothing, then yeah, I might say 30 to 40 minutes is too long. I might say 2 minutes is too long. But if you're giving me value for those 30, I mean, how about this? Has anyone gone on a Pace call? Has anyone been on a Zoom with Pace? Anybody? I see Tanisha nodding her head yes. Anyone else? All right, like Chris, you've been on a Zoom with Pace before? Let me ask you, when you've been on that Zoom with Pace, how long does he go sometimes?
I've been on a 5-hour Zoom with him before.
Facts.
And that's
5 hours.
27 hours.
27 hours, right? So let me ask, why don't we log, or maybe most of us do log off. Maybe most of us are a little bit more normal. We get off and we come back on. But why do we absorb that much from him? Why do we let him go for 27 hours?
because he's provided, it's valuable to you as the person who's receiving the information.
Exactly.
100%.
You're giving value. You're pouring value into people. So when you are getting the value, you will be allowed to go as long as you want. When you're providing that value, people will let you go. And here's the beautiful thing. This is what I love about the podcast. If I am tired of listening to you, what can I do? Boop. I pause it. How many of us have, like, we've just been busy? Like, we'll pause the podcast, come back and listen to it later. Maybe we listen to the first half driving into work. We listen to the second half driving back from work. So you want to think about the timing more based around how long can you have a valuable conversation. That's where we want to start getting our mind. So, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that in a little bit later when we talk about getting your guest on and how you decide to do the show. But for the first part, this is going to be the simple part. I think when a lot of people are thinking about the podcast, they usually have a topic in mind. They kind of know the direction they want to go in. And the biggest holdup I see is trying to figure out the equipment, right? People are like, yo, do I need this fancy, crazy mic with mic stand? This is not my mic, by the way. This is like Luciano's mic. You want to know what my podcast has been recorded on for the last 56 episodes? And with my 56 episodes, like we've had over, I think it's like over 6,000 downloads, over 3,000 or 4,000 unique listeners, like separate individuals coming in and listening. Like the podcast has done well, in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. And people seem like I get a lot of good feedback. What I'm recording on is very simple. I have a Yeti Blue microphone that I picked up off of Amazon for, I think I got mine for $90. It is a very inexpensive microphone. It plugs in to my laptop. It cost me less than $100, plugs in via USB. That is it. That's my podcast equipment. That is all of it. It is a microphone, a single microphone. And actually, in the very beginning, when I started off with a tape recorder. Here's why. Audio quality does actually matter. The video quality, not as much. I record on Zoom. Audio quality does matter. People will put up for choppy videos. They will not put up for choppy audio. All right, does that make sense to everyone? Right, we've all had those phone calls when we're trying to talk to someone and they keep chopping up and you're just getting so frustrated. So it is worthwhile to invest in a microphone. It doesn't need to be a rodeo mic that's costing $900. You can start off with a simple Yeti. They're really good for Zoom. They're really good for podcasting. They're really good for just everything that you're going to do as a daily routine anyhow. And they're very inexpensive. Now, oh, thank you, man. I'm glad that you enjoyed the intro. I got a buddy of mine to listen to that. And I'm going to talk about that as well in a little bit. When it comes to more equipment, right? Because that's going to be the physical piece of equipment that you get, that Yeti microphone or whatever microphone you get. I have no association to any of them. So if anyone wants the link, I could go pull it up and get it for you on Amazon real quick. But get whatever microphone you want. Don't let that be the thing that holds you back. When you record your episodes, there's going to be a few different ways to record it. And this one, you're going to want to take a little bit of a note for. And later when I give you guys the book I have here, you will have all this stuff in note format as well. You're going to want to record it in one of two things. Either through a Zoom, like what I'm doing right now. Like when I'm done with this, there's going to be an audio file that comes to me from Zoom. I'm going to get a video file, which is going to be an MP4. And I'm also going to get an audio file, which is going to come as an M4A file. I'm going to need to transfer my M4A into an MP3. How do I do that? I'm not a tech whiz. I Google M4A to MP3. And I click on one of the first three sites that is not a paid Google ad site. All three of them, I've used all three of them. All three of them work just fine. I have not had any viruses on my computer as of yet. I've been doing this for over a year and a half now. We want to get it into an MP3 format because that's where you'll be able to upload it. Most hosting sites are going to take your audio file as an MP3. Do we have any questions on that so far? Because this is where it's going to be a little technical. So some of the people that are like, my brain hurts. This is like the little technical part, but again, it's super simple. If anything, I'll even maybe make like a Loom video one day of doing it. What's the question, bro?
Hey, so one question is, you said to get, can you hear me well?
Yep, I get you. Perfect.
So let's say you get the person you're interviewing on like a Zoom call and stuff. Is there any tips or anything you want to give to them so that their audio will be high quality, like everything they're saying, so it'll be high quality? Like, is there anything like you want to tell them to bring along or tell them to do?
Good question. Really good question. So when you have your guest on, most of the time you're going to be reaching out to guests that have some sort of clout, some sort of following. They probably have their own podcast, YouTube channel, social media feed, and they're used to this stuff already. They've already got a nice mic set up. If you're interviewing, maybe you're deciding like, hey, I want to go after brand new newbies. Honestly, even if they're just set up with their basic Zoom without any sort of equipment, as long as they are in a quiet place, just ask them for the meeting, for the length of time that you're going to have them, ask them to go, hey, like, will you be able to go put yourself in a room where there's not going to be a lot of noise in the background? Because we don't want to hear, last thing you want to do is have your headphones in and then have like a screaming kid run through and yell into the microphone, and the listener just gets their eardrum blown out for a second.
So you pretty much, if someone doesn't have it, either wanted to ask, like, get in a quiet room, or let's say in a case if they're willing to get like a microphone, or kind of, you can even test the audio in that case from what you're saying to kind of see what suits you best for your audio, because at the end of the day, you're not only doing it for yourself, it's for your audience and for whoever you're interviewing. So.
Absolutely. So here's the interesting thing. If the value of the words you're speaking is strong enough, people will listen on if the audio isn't like the most crisp, high definition, right? So even like, for example, as you were asking that question, your audio was coming through clear enough where if that was a recorded podcast and you and I were doing an episode, that audio quality would be fine enough to release on social media as a podcast episode, as long as, this is the caveat, the conversation carries enough value. The words spoken carry enough value. However, if us talking about nothing and I can hear a little bit of like, oh man, it sounds like he's on a headphone microphone, or he sounds like he's on speakerphone, then I'm gonna like, no, I'm not listening to this.
Yeah, so as long as it provides like a ton of value so that people are willing to listen to your imperfect audio and get a ton of value, right?
Exactly. Like imagine Jeff Bezos gave you a call on like a crappy cell phone. You're still going to try and listen to what he's telling you. Like, this is Jeff Bezos talking to me right now. So that's where we want to be. Now, if we can add the higher audio quality on top, let's do it. If you're talking about having a one-off guest, it's a little impractical to ask them to go buy a microphone to come on your podcast. If you're going to be at the place where you're just gifting people microphones, that's going to be a really cool way to get some guests on. I'll definitely come on your podcast at that point as well. You're just like, yeah, man, go to your mailbox. Got a brand new rodeo mic for you. I'm like, oh, dang, man. Like, how many more episodes do you want to do?
I guess it's a way to get people that don't want to come. So.
And again, think about who you're going to be reaching out to. And in a little bit, so this is something we're going to be talking about when it comes to getting guests on, figuring out who your guests are going to be. We're going to have that conversation in just a bit. Yo, what's up, Christina? So as far as equipment goes, you really can start off with a basic mic. Now, if you have a little bit more funds and you want to do something like this where you get an additional camera like I have up here, this is Luciano's webcam, and you see it just adds an additional angle, gives you a little bit of a nice background. You can go that level. However, don't feel that that's the reason why you can't start. Start the podcast. It will get better over time. You don't need to start off with the best. You just need at the bare minimum. I'm giving you what the bare minimum you need is going to be a microphone. You need crisp audio to the best of your capability. So from there, you're going to be recording most of your podcasts via Zoom, unless you want to do them in person. I'm talking about being able to do them over Zoom because that's going to be the fastest way to reach a lot of different guests and to get more episodes out sooner. So if we're recording on Zoom, just like I did at the very beginning of this meeting, you're going to click that record button. Here's a pro tip. Record it to the computer, not to the cloud. Quality gets downgraded when it goes to the cloud. I found that out the hard way. Record to your computer, not to your cloud. After the video converts, remember to go and convert your M4A audio to an MP3 audio. This will allow you to edit the audio easier. This will allow you to upload the audio easier, and you will be able to do a lot more. So with that, you have the equipment needed, the physical equipment. Now, what software do you need in order to get the podcast up and running? Free software, Zoom. I do have the pro account, so I can have unlimited meetings with as many people as I want. I'd recommend investing the $14 for it. It's worth it. Just in case your podcast guest wants to bring another guest on and you're not doing that silly 45-minute countdown, you can go as long as the conversation needs to go. Very, very important. Super unprofessional to say, hey, I just need you to jump out and we'll jump back in. I did an episode like that. It was kind of funny. Luckily, it was like the Donis brothers I was doing it with. So they were young guys. They got it. We all kind of laughed about it, but it was also, it breaks up the flow. The last thing you want to do in the middle of a really good conversation is break the flow. So pay for that Zoom subscription and get that unlimited time. From there, the second piece of equipment or software that you're going to want to download for yourself, and this is a free software. It is called Audacity. So I'm going to actually share my screen so you can see for a second. Forgive my desktop if it's a little dirty. Audacity right here. So it looks like this. So you're going to see this as the icon. It's a little yellow ball with headphones. Let's see if I can open it up for you. For whatever reason, it doesn't want to load right now. There we go. So Audacity is loading. When I stream right now, it gets a little slow. So Audacity looks crazy complicated. It's not that complicated. It's pretty dang simple. So what I would do with Audacity, let me upload a file here for you. If we look over here, I have an audio file. So this is an audio file. This is the podcast I did with Robin. So I can drop my audio file inside here. So when you get your podcast episode and it's converted to an MP3 file, you'll be able to come into Audacity. You'll drop it, it'll upload. Again, it's going to load a little bit slower just because I'm streaming a couple things and I have the webcam running. And this is not the newest Mac, so please forgive me. As that begins to upload, what you're going to find is we want to bring this on so that we can do any sort of micro editing. So sometimes we start our podcast off or we start our recording on Zoom's off and there's 30 seconds of awkward silence. There's maybe us, explaining something to somebody. We want to cut all of that out so we can go right to the heart of the episode. We don't need people listening to the pre-talk banter. So you're going to see exactly how I do that. And when I say it's so simple, I mean it is so simple. So let's imagine here is, let's say these first 10 seconds are just me and Robin talking about absolutely nothing. What I would want to do is I would want to click inside here. I'm going to want to zoom in. So all I'm doing right now is I'm actually just using my keypad and I'm just zooming in like so. And I can erase this. So let's say, this was all garbage. I didn't want anyone to hear this. I can just highlight it and click the delete button. So it's really super simple. So let's say I delete it right now. So now my podcast can start from
of elite performers and applying those lessons to my own.
I'm able to start it from wherever I want. If I wanted to get even more granular, I can open it up more and just fix things. So this app is really useful and it's really easy to utilize. And what I like is when we see this, we can see just how loud it's going to get. So sometimes if it bounces up really high, I know, this might be really loud in comparison to the rest of my episode. So I can actually, through this application, and again, it's free, I can edit this simply by coming over here, clicking edit. Oh, I'm sorry. I would go on effect, I would go to amplify, and I can just lower the volume. So if I had like a one weird thing where it got really loud, I can just edit it to bring the volume down, and now the volume could begin to match everything else. So this isn't really going to be a tutorial on how to utilize this, but just recognize that this application will let you do all the little edits that you need to do in a very short period of time. It doesn't take more than probably 10 minutes to figure out how to get used to this, and you'll be able to utilize it. The second reason I really like it is because if I wanted to, I could record my podcast episodes directly in here. So let's say I had a friend that came over to my house and we just wanted to sit around the microphone and we didn't want any video and we just wanted to record our audio together. I just have to click this little button, and from here, my computer is picking up my audio and it's recording a brand new episode for me. If I need to pause, I can pause. If I need to unpause, I can unpause, and then I stop, and my audio has been recorded. It's that simple. So do we have any questions about Audacity before I close this and move on? Dope. I love it. So really, those are the only things that you need, again, at the very minimum, to get started with the podcast. You get your microphone, you get your Zoom account, you get Audacity, and you now have the equipment needed to record. You've got the software needed to record. We're ready to go. So now you've recorded an episode.
Hey, love. Whenever you lock me out.
You've got a file. Oh, so that's a question. You recorded the episode, you have a file, and now you're saying, okay, what do I do with the file next? Where does it go? How many of you have heard the podcast on iTunes? All right, anyone? All right, so I see a few. Anyone heard the podcast on Spotify? Right, so some of you heard it on Spotify, some of you heard it on iTunes, right? Here's the thing. A lot of people think I'm going to Spotify or I'm going to iTunes to upload my file. I'm going to neither one of those places. In order to get your podcast out on the internet, and real quick, before I move on, Christina said, what if I'm recording for YouTube? Christina, you mind unmuting yourself for 2 seconds?
Hey, Marlon.
Hey, what's up, Christina? So when you say recording, yeah, no worries. Let's answer your question.
So if you're recording on Zoom, you can still put that on YouTube?
Of course.
Sorry.
No,
idea.
don't be sorry. These are great questions because someone else might be thinking the exact same thing. So if I record it to Zoom, what I can do is, let me share my screen again. So let's say I recorded it to Zoom. And afterwards, so this is what it looks like, by the way, after you finish recording, right? We're going to see here the M4A file. So Zoom, after it finishes, if anyone's ever recorded their Zooms, this is what it looks like. You get an audio only M4A. So this is the audio file. Then you get an MP4 video. So if I want to upload this video to YouTube, I can go ahead and bring this over to YouTube and upload it. If I want to edit the video before I upload it to YouTube, you're going to want to utilize an editing software. I do edit my videos. I edit it on my desktop, which I'm not on today. And I use Adobe Premiere Pro to edit my videos, to just chop it up. That's how I make those little YouTube, Instagram clips. Or usually with YouTube, I just drop the entire raw video on YouTube because people don't mind watching longer videos on YouTube. The cool thing about Zoom as well, if I wanted to, let's close this. If I wanted to, I could actually stream directly from Zoom onto YouTube and Facebook if I wanted to. So if you
With
don't,
StreamYard?
you could use StreamYard and even inside the app. So I can't share, you can't see my Zoom screen, unfortunately. You will, I don't know if you'll even see this in the recording, but when you have the paid version of Zoom, you as the host will have 3 little buttons on the side that say more. It'll show you can pause recording or stop your recording, create a breakout room. It'll say live on Facebook, live on YouTube, or live on a custom streaming service. So you can stream it directly to YouTube or Facebook or to an app like StreamYard, which would then stream it to multiple platforms live. So this is if you want to do live videos. I personally don't do live podcast episodes.
No.
That would put me in a weird schedule that I don't want to keep.
Okay, thank you, Marlon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Good question. So earlier I asked essentially if you've seen it on iTunes, if you've seen it on Spotify, if you've seen it on Google Play, you've seen the podcast everywhere or in multiple places. How am I getting it in those multiple places? I'm going to show you. This is really important. And this is one of the parts that almost everyone kind of gets lost on in the very beginning. So I'm going to share the screen here, and we're going to go to a website. So podcasts get hosted on what we call host sites. So your host site is what holds your podcast. There's a lot of different host sites. You have to pay for a host site. Some host sites start as cheap as, I think, $20 for the year, and some of them go up to as much as $500 for a year. They are like the CRMs of podcasting. This is where your data gets held. This is how you operate as a podcaster. So it's not very expensive if you think about it. I think I paid $100 for the year. So I pay less than $10 a month to be able to host my podcast for an entire year. When I log in, this is what you're going to see. So it's called Captivate.fm. Out of all the different ones I went through, this was a really solid podcast that I came and found. So inside, when you come in, it's going to start to show you your analytics as it loads. According to this, no one listens to my podcast ever. It's all been a lie. None of you have ever heard my podcast. So once it loads, you'll see the numbers will start to auto-populate, and it will show you the different listeners today, yesterday, the last 7 days, the last 28 days. Hopefully it loads so it makes it look like I actually have people listening. But right now it says zeros across the board. But once we're inside here, we're going to go and we want to be able to upload the podcast. So we would upload it onto our host site like this. So you see I have my podcast. And what happens from here is it goes out and it gets sent to it distributes to multiple platforms. So I come out here and it has distribution outlets. So I want to link it to Apple. I want to link it to Spotify, to Google, to Amazon. So wherever I want it to go, I can literally come in here and with one click, I go through a quick setup. Usually it takes about a minute. And now my podcast is hosted on another website. So that's one of the cool things about having a podcast. You can be on multiple platforms. You only have to do the work once and go to one place, and you can be in all of these other places wherever people listen. So I would recommend personally getting on all of these podcasts, all of these sites everywhere. Give people an opportunity to find you no matter where you go. It does not cost you any more money to be sent out to these platforms. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah, I
Hopefully,
didn't realize it was that easy. That's awesome.
it's ridiculously easy. They've made it so much easier, which is the nice part. Here's an even better part. So you can come over here to your content library, and hopefully it opens up. So you'll see I have different things inside here. Here are all of my episodes that I've uploaded. These are the raw files. I can upload them inside here. If you see on the right-hand side, after I upload the file, I can create an episode. What that means is when I come over here to episodes, I can set them, as you see, they're scheduled. So I can come in here, I can record, let's say 10, 12, 15, 30 episodes, and I can just set them out to be released on certain days. So people are like, how the heck are you getting out and releasing all of these? Well, I just took one Sunday, I recorded 15 episodes, and I set them to come out for the next few weeks, right? And then they'll automatically drop at the time that you want. So it's really, really convenient. It doesn't take as much time as a lot of people think. The most amount of time it's going to actually take is during the actual recording of the episode and the editing of the episode, depending on how fancy you want to get. So any questions about that part?
Hey, Marlon.
Yep.
So this Captivate, it does the same thing as StreamYard, except it also hosts it. Is that what I'm gathering here?
No, so good question. Captivate is a podcast hosting platform. It's a podcast hosting website. So for you to go and find people's podcasts on iTunes and Spotify and all of those different places where people listen to their favorite podcast, you're going onto websites like they're hosting it from Captivate. There are other Captivate's not the only host site. And if anyone wants to utilize Captivate, let me know too, because I get a promo code that I can give you guys that I think you get like 14 days free. And full disclosure, it is an affiliate link. But again, there's many other links to use. There's many other platforms to use. I just liked Captivate because it was one of the cheapest, easiest to look at, and it gave me my analytics. So I can actually see where people are listening from. I don't know why it's not loading right now, but normally it shows me where people listen from, what part of the world they were tuning in, what sort of device they were using, if they were listening from an iPhone, if they were listening from an Android, if they listened from their computer. It gives me all this unique information so I can better understand my listener. StreamYard, however, is for when you are doing live interviews, live streaming, kind of like this Zoom.
Okay.
So if I wanted people to watch me live while I was doing it, like Wholesale Hotline is happening live, they stream that from StreamYard so that they can send it out to people live.
Okay, that makes sense. And then Captivate will like, because I wanted to record, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 episodes like every Tuesday or something, and then like have them release, whenever. So that Captivate will do that.
Captivate will do that for you. So you would record your podcast episodes. How do you plan on recording your podcast episodes? Is it going to be you by yourself? Will you be interviewing guests?
Yeah. So my entire podcast is revolved around interviewing other people. Yeah.
Perfect. And do you plan on interviewing them via Zoom or in person?
Zoom or what?
Zoom or in person?
Oh, Zoom for sure.
Okay, perfect. So you would interview them whenever your heart desired, whenever your schedule permitted, and you would take that Zoom recording, you would convert your MP3, do whatever sort of editing you wanted to do to your audio file. And once you had your finished audio file, you would then come to a captivate.com or a site like captivate.fm. You would upload it there and you would schedule the release for whenever you wanted. So you can actually set the schedule. So let's say I really quickly I came over here, I'd go to my content library. You see right here where it says upload. I'd be like, all right, cool. Let me upload an episode right now. It's going to ask for an MP3 file. So I can take my file right there. And very simply, like you're going to see it's super simple. I'd click on upload file. And as it uploaded, right, let's imagine that this already uploaded. So I can get rid of that. I would have the file here. So like these files are files I uploaded that I haven't turned into episodes yet. So if I want to create this as an episode, I'd click create episode. I would be able to name my episode right here. So I can give it the title. I can write whatever show notes I want, and this will auto-populate onto all the other hosting sites. So it'll auto-populate onto your iTunes, onto your Spotify, to your SoundCloud, wherever you want it to go. I highly recommend inside this area, at some point you put your contact information, follow me on Instagram, connect with me here, whatever you want, put that information here as like a template and save it somewhere like in your notes or somewhere that you can just automatically copy and paste that same portion of your template. So you don't have to waste time doing that over and over every time. You put what episode it is. You could type the episode type. So my short episodes or bonus episodes, my traditional 40 to 60 minute episodes are here, normal, right? If I'm going to be using curse words, I'll just let people know, hey, like, don't let your kids listen to this. If I had, I could put them here. If I had a picture, let's say every episode I did, I took a picture of my guest, I can upload the picture here. So it would immediately upload to iTunes. I don't do that.
I love that.
I just let my background automatically be it. So it's like if I turn off my camera, you see that that's my podcast background. That just goes with every episode. And then
I actually have somebody working on mine now.
Oh, beautiful. So you're getting someone working on your logo right now.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Perfect. And this is what's really cool about Captivate. If you decide you want to monetize your podcast and you're like, you know what, at the beginning of every episode, I'm going to let an ad play. You can sell a spot on, this is a brand new feature. They just added this about a month ago. You can edit it so that you can drop You can basically let people know like, hey, you can put ads in my podcast at the beginning.
Oh, wow.
So you can start to monetize your podcast. I don't do that right now because I'm still growing an audience, but at some point I probably won't do it with the prepaid ads. I'll probably just like have people that I want to work with come in. This is the part you're caring about, your publishing date. So I'm going to click, like, you know what? My episodes drop every Monday. So I see Monday. I want this to drop on the 13th. I like it to come out early in the morning. They use military time. So I would go and click 6 a.m. and I would click schedule.
I
And
love it.
now
That
that's
is so cool.
did my work. So Monday morning on the 13th to 6 a.m. Eastern time or whatever time zone I put, it will get released and pumped out everywhere.
Okay. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Now I
so-
just have to figure out Zoom and I'll be on a roll.
Yeah, that one I don't know if I can help you with there. But so it's that simple. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, you're absolutely welcome. If you forget, come back and rewatch the recording. And if you still have a question after that, come and ask me. I'm more than happy to help. It's gonna be super simple.
I
So-
appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. So here's really, really an important part. I call it scripting your show. Right? Having a script or an outline of how you want the show to go. Think about that, right? Do you want an introduction? Do you not want an introduction? Do you just want to jump right into it? So the format I like to use, and I picked this up from just watching, truthfully, I just watched some other people's shows and I figured out what did I like about it. And I also thought about the seller calls that we make. So I kind of combined the two things about seller calls and watching other people's shows, which is setting an upfront contract, right? And if anyone's ever been on Pace's Zooms, you see that he does this at the beginning of his Zooms so that he can give you a gauge of how long you're going to be here. I did it at the beginning of this Zoom, right? I told you what we're going to talk about. I told you what you're going to take away from it. So a part of my script, a part of my blueprint is at the beginning of the episode, after you get through the introduction music, the introduction music comes on. I tell you what the show's about. I tell you about who the guest is and what you can expect to get from this episode, what you're going to be listening to. And then I go in and actually have the episode. Sometimes you might have a guest that you don't know a lot about. Here's the beautiful thing about being able to edit the audio and not filming it live. You can have the episode, have the conversations, and go loosey-goosey with it. And after you record, immediately after you're finished recording, do an introduction. Hey, in this episode, you're going to listen to me and Dustin sit down and talk about systems, talk about business, talk about family, talk about traveling across the country in our cars. And by the end of this, you're going to know exactly how to automate your business to the point where you can run it from the road. So stay tuned. Make sure you have notes while you're listening. This episode is going to be super amazing. Looking forward to catching you on the back end. So I can do all of that after I recorded the episode, after I know what we talked about. So part of my structure is let me introduce the audience to what we're going to talk about. Then for me personally, I let the guests know it's going to be pretty casual in conversation. It's going to feel like a conversation back and forth, right? And if anyone's ever seen me, I know Dustin, you were there when I interviewed Zach, so you got to see me tell him this in person before we started filming. I told him like, hey, it's going to be a pretty casual conversation. We're just going to go back and forth. And if there's something on your heart or something on your mind that you want to talk about, let's go there. I leave the conversation. I leave plenty of room for us to go there. However, I also do have a set of guiding questions that I feel like if we're going down a tangent and we're going that too deep down a rabbit hole, I'm going to pull us back out with these questions because my audience is expecting us to be done in 60 minutes. So we don't have 4 hours to go down the rabbit hole. So I let my guests know as well, right? So I set the structure for all of us. Like everybody knows what the structure is going to be. And it provides enough leeway for us to talk about whatever we want, but there is a box to keep us in playing field. Does that make sense to anyone? Does anyone have a question on that? Because this is really important to making a quality podcast, to making quality episodes.
What is a good time frame for a podcast to retain the listener's attention. Because I kind of wanted to theme mine to where it's, because we all know I can talk for forever. So I wanted it to be geared and a little bit humorous, but geared more towards people with a short attention span. So I was thinking like maybe 30 minutes, but is that too long, too short?
Perfect question. And so I know you jumped in a little late, so you missed this because this was one of the first.
I
things-
just found out. I'm so sorry.
No, nothing to be sorry about. So when you watch the recording, you're going to see it like with a little bit more detail. At the beginning, we talked about why you're doing the podcast, right? So why are you creating it? And we talked about who the podcast is for. So your audience is totally different from my audience, right? When I think about my who's, I'm not thinking of anyone with a short attention span. But your who might be, seriously, your who might be like, well, you know what? I am serving the crowd that like is like, yo, I'm trying to go. I'm listening to the podcast, but I'm also washing the car, grabbing the kids, and sending out an email at the same time. So with you knowing that, you're going to know, hey, based off of me knowing how these people think, I know they don't want a podcast that's going on for an hour. They want a 10-minute podcast. They could be in and out. They got things to do. Great. That's how long your episodes are going to be. Because that's the audience you're serving. Me, I'm serving my audience that's similar to me, where it's like, listen, I came to podcast because I can take long form content. I want to listen for an extended period of time. I want the nitty gritty. Let's go through the jungle and bushwhack. Like, I don't want the clear path. Like, give me all that extra stuff, all the stuff I don't need to know. I want to know it. That's how my mind works. So I make the episodes for those people that want to keep going deeper and deeper with the questions.
Awesome.
That makes sense?
Awesome.
Answer?
Yep, that's good. Thank you.
Awesome, no worries. So that's essentially how we want to script the show. You want to have a general blueprint. So there is, when I go on with each episode, I'm absolutely not winging it. Here's another reason why I'm not doing that. I respect my guests and their time. I respect their time a lot, and I want to show them that by having a structured framework for them. That will help you stand out so much when it comes to actually doing and running the interviews, running the episodes. They're going to see like, wow, they started when they said they were going to start and they're finishing around the time they said they were going to finish. And if you're able to do this without necessarily staring at a clock because you already framed out the questions, you had a sense of where it was going, oh my gosh, like you're going to get brownie points. You're going to see it in people's eyes like, wow, people asked me for interviews and they kept me on here for dang near 2 hours and I didn't want to be a rude jerk while being recorded. Because think about it, you're locking people in, you're recording them. So they have to be polite. So do them the favor of not letting them be a jerk to you because you were being rude with their time. Create a script, create a structure for yourself. And with that being said, a script, it's also going to mean create something of an outro and something of an intro. Right? Having an introduction, if you've listened to my podcast, you know I started off with, hey, my name is Marlon Johnson. I'm the host of Into the Mind. I'm a parkour athlete turned entrepreneur. I've been studying mindset and success for over a decade now. And I believe that people have the secrets to success. And as I go out and I learn from them directly, I want to pass this information on to my community, to my friends. I don't want to just hold it on to myself. I know that these conversations are very valuable. So I want to be able to share that with you all. And my guests come on this show for free. They don't ask for anything in return. So if you can do one thing to provide value to show that you appreciate these episodes, please share it with a friend. Go out and share it with anybody, only if you receive value. If you don't receive any value, no need to share it. But if you do receive value, please take this out and share with a friend. On that note, let's jump right into the episode. And that's a basic script that I utilize that I just let out. And since I'm saying something like that almost every single time, what do you think I do? I pre-record that script and I just paste it onto the front end of my episode so I don't have to say it every time. Right? And actually, I'm going to probably end up creating a new one. And I do the exact same thing with the outro. You know, oh my gosh, I hope you enjoyed that episode just as much as I have. That was so much fun. Listen, if you received anything of value and you really want to show me appreciation and you want to show the guest appreciation, tag yourself, screenshot watching this video, screenshot where you're at, go on social media, share that and tag me, tag the guest. Let's continue the conversation and share this with a friend. And don't just do a generic share. I'm talking about share it for real. Open up your cell phone, text it to somebody that you think would actually benefit. Like, hey, listen, I just heard this episode. I thought about you. I think you can get a lot out of it. Just listen to this, and I'm curious to hear what you think, right? Do that, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. So I actually give people a call to action, right? We want to ask for the referral. We want to let them share it, because the truth is, as we do get from this, and this is how you have to frame the mindset. If you're actually giving value to your guest, to your audience hangs out with other people that are similar to them. So I know that if Dustin gets any value from this episode, Dustin hangs out with friends that are like-minded, and they might be going through something. He can say, hey, you know what? You should actually listen to this episode I just heard. I picked up a really good nugget. I think you might like it. Or he might just discuss it. And, you know, it's more inclined to get shared that way. So people are going to start, you're going to start building an organic audience. You don't want people that are going to be there for the sake of being there. You want people that are going to be there because they actually genuinely enjoy the content and they get some sort of use out of it. So any questions on that before I continue? And I promise you, I'm not going to hold you here for much longer than another 20 minutes. And I'll open up some questions as well if you have. Cool. So this is going to be super, 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 super important. We understand why we're doing it. We understand who it's for and why they should care. We understand what we need as far as material, as far as getting a simple microphone and the software required, right, with Zoom and Audacity. Or you could use other things if you're, no worries, Chad, if you want to use other things. And we understand how to script our intros and our outros, right? And I'm giving you a very basic understanding. I mean, I can make this like a 5-hour long thing. I'm not going to hold you guys here for 5 hours on a Friday night. You guys and girls have things to do with your life. I will let you get back to your Friday. However, this is the part that like is the bread and butter. Like this, I probably should have led with this in all honesty. Like I really shouldn't have made you wait for this part. I just had a thought. I just had an idea. I was like, blow up the chat with fire emojis. If you want to see me drop this next thing, I've been watching way too many YouTubers. So here's what you want to do. You want to figure out for yourself one of two basic things. Do you want to host the podcast by yourself, as in you are the solo host, or do you want to have co-host? Think of Sunday service, you know, Jesse, I appreciate you, bro. Sunday service versus wholesale hotline. There's pros and cons to both, right? The pro to being a solo act is you can record episodes whenever the heck you want, whenever you feel inspired, whenever you feel like it, your time schedule. It's a lot easier to just get up and do it. Like 2 o'clock in the morning, you want to record an episode, you can just go get in front of the microphone and take care of that if you're doing solo episodes or whatever the case may be. If you have co-hosts, you need to be able to align with their schedules. Now, here's the nice thing. With co-host, you're going to get different personalities that will feed into the show, feed into the episode. It'll give your audience a little bit more playfulness back and forth. It can be more conversational, even with the guest, right? 2 minds asking a question versus 1. You're going to get usually a lot more out of it. The challenge is who's in control. It's like having business partners. So really think for yourself, do I want to be a solo act, or do I want to have a partner or a co-host, someone that comes on? The co-host can help you stay consistent, however. So it's going to be a personal preference. There's no right or wrong answer there. Personally, you see, I went solo because I want to be able to record whenever I want. I want to be able to talk about whatever I want. It's my podcast. If you don't like it, leave. That's how I genuinely feel about the podcast. So really, really think about it. And at the same time, there's something that you could do projects with people, right? Like Ingrid and I were talking about doing a project together where we'd do like this show together, right? Kevin and I were on Twitch together earlier today. So every now and then you can go and do it with somebody else, but figure out for yourself which one you want. Personally, I want to build my own personal brand. So I am targeting and focusing on myself for now. Okay, it's going to take a little bit more work on my behalf, but that's where I'm personally at. So figure out for yourself where you want to be. Any questions about that before we move on? I see Chad said crazy part is that I've been talking with someone about my podcast and they want to do one together, and it slipped my mind about tonight. Dang, you slipped, man, you're supposed to do something with Tanisha. You messed up, bro. So just figure it out. Christina, you said that's what you were thinking, but mine's going to be 95% interview style, which is great. So you're going to have that person go back and forth with, but you would like to have a guest host too. Is that a thing? It is absolutely a thing. So you can have guest hosts every now and then that you introduce your audience to, right? Like, hey, everybody, this is Christina. Welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm being joined with my guest host. You might remember them from episode 2. It's Susan. Susan doesn't always get a chance to be on the show because her schedule is just so busy. But when she can be here, she's an absolute riot. So just keep in mind when you hear that other voice, it might not be our guest. That's actually Susan popping out from the dungeon, and she's going to be with us. Hopefully she's in tomorrow's episode 2. We'll see. Right, so we just let the audience know what's going on, but they know that you're the main host. So with that being the case, you figure out if you're going to host a solo act or together. Then you figure out your podcast style, your podcast type. Do you want to have a podcast where you are interviewing guests? Or do you want to have a podcast where it is just your personal diary? Neither one is right or wrong. Andy Frisella, who had the MFCEO podcast, one of the highest rating business podcasts. I think I don't think it's there anymore, but for about 3 or 4 years straight, the highest rated #1 business podcast out there. He was doing a majority of his episodes as just solo talks. It was just like him ranting to a microphone. So if you have that skill, if you have that capability, if you got the gift of gab and you're like, yo, I just need to release my words, you can go there. If you need to talk, have one where you are just dropping knowledge bombs and dropping your opinions and saying what you want to say. Because if you choose to go the route of having a guest, most people are going to want to listen to your guest speak. And if you are someone that needs to talk and want to talk a lot and you're talking over your guest all the time, your audience is going to hate that. They're going to be like, why do you keep interrupting your guests? And I literally see this in like chats, like when I look at other people's comments that have guests, I'll see the audience literally type stop. Like the show would have been so much better if you stopped interrupting. So you'll notice if you listen to any of my podcasts, my job as an interviewer is to ask the right questions. I want to guide the conversation because my audience doesn't have the opportunity to be in the room with you and they want to know. My job, the best interviewers you will ever see, they will ask way more questions and they will shut up. It's like seller calls. They are letting the guest talk for about 95% of the time. They are talking for about 5% of the time. They throw their own little things in there. They'll respond to let the, oh my gosh, this is like my favorite part. Like this is like the part that, again, this is what makes the episode so much fun. It is the guest. For me personally, it's getting my guest and getting my interviewee onto the show, deep diving with them, asking them some really great questions, actively listening to show them that I care, to show them that I'm following, and then either continuing along the lines that we're going or having another question that is intelligent based off of what they've said and based off of the research I've done on them so that we can move to another topic. It doesn't feel abrupt and you're able to get even more value and perspective from them. We're just like literally pulling as much out as we can in that short period of time. It is, I love it. It is one of my favorite things. So I'm going to pause for a second and look here at the chat. Christina said, would it be weird to do 2 different podcasts at some point? No, not at all. So you can have 2 different podcasts. It's going to be about your bandwidth, right? I do one podcast because my bandwidth wouldn't allow me to go and do multiple unless I just started getting paid a lot more from my podcast. My podcasts are passion projects, as you guys see. Like I don't do any advertisements or any of that stuff. I get paid for my podcast indirectly through people bringing deals to me and things of that nature. Dominique says, can you have something where it's two hosts, depending on the topic, the stronger person leads, but still back and forth? Absolutely, you can. And you would make that decision, right? Try to just give your audience some level of consistency. So if it's going to be like super sporadic when the other person comes on, but you think they're going to be coming on often enough that it's going to be a kind of a thing, let your audience know, hey, this is what the case is. You're going to be listening to me most times. Because here's what's going to happen. If people are showing up because they like the dynamic of the two of you, and now it's just you, people are going to be thrown off, and maybe they stop listening and they don't come back. And so now you're finding yourself trying to create two different things for them, right? You don't want to try and please everyone. You want to try and figure out what you can do consistently and do that thing. I like talking about mindset. That's what I'm going to talk about. Some people, you go on their podcast, they just want to talk numbers, right? Like they're just like, yo, give me the numbers. That's what they enjoy talking about. What's up, bro?
I just
So you just bought toilet paper?
2 acres.
2 acres. What? Congrats, bro. Luciano's out here locking up deals, y'all, on a freaking Friday night, man. Dude, I freaking love this guy. So figure out what you want to talk about, what you're gonna be able to do consistently. So Dominique says this is great guest info, fire, love it. So researching the guest ahead of time is crucial. Oh my gosh. Yes. What up, David? Researching the guest beforehand is crucial. This is actually one of my favorite parts. And this is the part that will be a little bit time consuming depending on how you want to do the show. You want to show your guests that you respect them. So here's my strategy. I'm going to share with you all what I do. And you'll start to see this in my episodes, right? I pick people that I personally want to learn from. I wanted to learn from Cody. I wanted to learn from Steve. I wanted to learn from Pace. I wanted to learn from Matt. Like these are all people that I wanted to reach out and learn from. In fact, I had one guest on my show. His name was Myron Golden. If anyone here is into sales and into like studies of the Bible, Myron is a phenomenal salesman. He literally goes and sells out rooms, and he's on stage selling things that are $100,000, $200,000, $500,000. He has $1 million package that he sells that people pay for. $1 million consulting fee. That is what he charges for his consulting fee. $1 million. That's a lot of money to consult with the man for, I think, like 6 months. So I came across him in a clubhouse room one day. He was talking, and I was just captivated by him. Like I was just kind of room hopping back then. I heard him and I said, holy cow, this guy is amazing. I need to plug in. I need to connect to this. And I went on Instagram, I shot him a DM, and I can show you later what I sent him, but I sent him something along the lines of this. Because when we reach out to people, we want to lead with value. I don't want to say, hey, Myron, I heard you on my show, and I think it would give me major clout for you to come on and boost my listeners, right? That's not how I want to lead. It's, hey, Myron, I was bouncing around on a clubhouse. I came across you in a room, and honestly, I was captivated by the message. In the short span of 20 minutes, I absorbed so much knowledge. You said some things I had never heard before, and I found your words to be very valuable. Now, I was super surprised because I had never heard of you. And I run a podcast where I have a lot of different guests and audience that think like me, who I know would receive value from someone like you listening to your story and listening to your words. I think you need to be found out by them. I think they need to come and start listening to you, and they should become fans of yours. And I would love to have you on my platform so that you can share your story with them. That's how I led with value, right? It is bigging him up. It is, Myron, please take my audience, right? Please get more eyeballs for what you're doing, your project, and come on my platform so I can promote you. Because here's the thing, we all like to talk about ourselves, whether we want to admit it or not. However, we're polite enough not to just walk out and talk about ourselves all day and night, right? Like David could sit and talk about how sweet his stash is for hours, but if we didn't ask him, we might think, man, he's being rude. But if I say, David, can you please come onto my podcast and tell me all about that sweet stash and how you're a fireman and how you're freaking awesome and you're cool. He now has permission to talk about himself as much as he would like, and it's not seen as bragging. It's not seen as audacious. Like, it's just, I asked him to share. In fact, I'm creating a platform and an environment where I want him to share. I want to highlight him and I want to give him praise. So for an entrepreneur, for anybody who's recognizing how important it is to gather attention, you are bringing them a ton of value by doing that. You're giving them the opportunity to talk about themselves. Think about how valuable that is. How valuable is it to walk up to Steve Trang and say, yo, Steve, I want you to boast about everything. And you're going to frame it in a way where it doesn't sound like he's bragging. You get to frame it in a way where it's like, man, like, holy crap, this guy's freaking awesome. But if he said those same words at a dinner party when no one asked, they'd be like, wow, this guy's arrogant. So it's really important that we learn how to reach out to our guests by leading value. And we do want to do some research on them. So earlier, someone asked, I believe it was Christina, who asked, should we be doing research on our guest? Abso-freaking-lutely. If you have the time, do the research on them. So a lot of people, and I'm not blind to this, a lot of people, and this isn't bragging, and hopefully you don't see it as bragging, because all of you have listened, most of you have all listened to my podcast. People like it. People genuinely like it. I've gotten feedback. People tell me, man, the episodes are great. Holy cow. Like, I've listened to them be interviewed by other people, but you somehow like got them to say things I never heard anyone else say. How am I doing that? Because that's not happening on accident. That is very purposeful. Buy the ebook and I'll tell you. I'm joking. So what I do is very simple. I actually go and I find other people that have interviewed them in the past, as recent or as old, or I just find the people that interview the best, right? So if I see that someone's been on like maybe Steve Trang's podcast, I'll go listen there. Or if I find that they've been on like a really good interviewer's podcast, I go and I find their episode. Once I find their episode, I listen to the entire episode. So if it's an hour long, I'm actually sitting down and listening for an hour. And during that hour, I'm taking out pen and paper and I'm actually taking notes. I'm not taking notes on their answers, but I'm taking notes on what questions do I still have after they've answered the question that's been asked? What do I still want to know? What didn't you get to? That's how I'm going an extra layer deep. That's why I'm able to ask questions that don't feel generic. That's why after every single interview I've done with somebody, almost every single interview, the person has looked at me and said, wow, that was one of the best interviews I've ever done. That is literally my secret. That is my bread and butter. Like, you have my secret formula now to go make better podcast episodes for me. That's it. Because what a lot of people don't do, they'll go and they'll get the guest, but they won't do any sort of research, and they end up asking the same generic questions that have been answered on 15 other podcasts already. So here's what happens. If your guests have already heard that person on someone else's podcast, and they understand that your style is asking generic questions, they're not really going to want to stick around and listen to the whole episode. And here's even more important. Your guest will not feel all inclined to share the episode they just recorded with you, because it feels like all the other episodes they've done. But if you get deep with them and you take them to another layer, they're going to be like, dang, I didn't even know I had those answers in me. And they're going to want to share their own episodes. To Christina's point, you made them feel special. So it's very important that if you have the time, you do the research. If you don't have the time, make the time to go do the research. It will get you to that next level. The third reason it is super crucial to do this, and I promise I'm not going to hold you here all night. This is, I said, I should have started off with just talking about the guests, because to me, this is like the most important part. All the other stuff, once you figure it out, it's going to be simple to repeat. You're only going to have to do it once in a while. When you get the guest, you got them figured out, you figured out questions for them. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I didn't write this part down for you. When you figure out the questions you're going to ask them, they're going to share it. Now, thank you, I'm back. You're going to create deeper relationships with these people. So you're going to create genuine freaking relationships with them, which is like so freaking invaluable, right? Like I can now on my phone reach out and call up Cody. I can call up Devin. I can call up Matt Baird. I can call up Matt Simmons, right? These people are like genuinely my friends. And I say that in a place where it's like, yeah, well, what difference does that make? Guys, I befriended these people before I was really doing anything in real estate. I'm still nowhere near where I want to be. But in the beginning, I started these interviews when I hadn't even done a deal yet. So I'm now getting time of day from individuals that, based on our skill level in this industry, we're like here from each other. But based off of the relationship level, we are like perfectly even. So I'm able to bridge this gap by going here. And now they can bring all of that they have there for me. They can bring it up to me. And I'm able to forge these relationships when I need it. I can pick up the phone. In fact, I'm doing a deal with somebody that I had as a guest right now. Like I'm buying a deal from them and I'm going to be partnering with them on a deal. And they were someone that I forged a relationship through my podcast. That's when a relationship got solidified. So leverage the guests, like pick guests that you actually want to befriend. Take time to do the research on them and truly connect. Mitch, I know you got to run. You catch the rest of the replay. Sorry, I went over. Enjoy the rest of the night, man. So yeah, getting the guests is going to be super duper crucial. Any questions on getting your guest? Cool.
Marlon, how do you suggest like reaching out to somebody as far as inviting them onto your podcast? I would say trying to get them on a voice call because it's more personal, but you've got more experience. So how do you invite guests?
Super good question. Guys, I do my research on them in a bit of a way. So getting the first few guests might be difficult, but once you get them, leverage them. So for instance, who did I have on recently that I was trying to connect with? There's somebody let me look real quick at my podcast and see who I've had on. Right. Night, Carolyn. Okay, no thanks. So what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling up my podcast to see who I've had on, because what I've done is I will reach out to somebody. Okay, perfect. I had Antoine Martel. Antoine Martel is based out of California, young entrepreneur. I think he's about 27, has a total turnkey business. I forget how many followers he has on like social media. He's like a decently big following. I had no connection to him. How did I get him on my podcast? Well, when I reached out to him, I gave him that same sort of message that I gave the Myron, kind of bigging him up and like telling him like, dude, what you're doing here is so valuable. And I want to share your wisdom. I want to share it with people, right? So I'm showing him like, I want to add value. I think what you're doing is valuable. I want to get you in front of more people. I want to get more eyeballs on you. Hey man, take a listen to my podcast and see if it's a vibe for you. And if you think it's a good fit, I would love to have you on. So I'll actually I'll DM him and I'll send him a link to my podcast. Now, when I send him a link to my podcast, I am choosing a very specific episode to send him as the, hey, take a listen. I'm sending him somebody that he already knows, or somebody that I see that he's already following, or somebody that he's probably already impressed with. So in this case, I know he knows Alon Abgi, and Alon Abgi is my buddy from back home who's a young guy with a couple, like maybe like 20, $30 million worth of real estate under his belt. So I'm sending him Alon's episode that Alon did with me, where Alon talks about how like good of a job I did in that, this and that. So now I'm leveraging Alon to get Antoine. And now I've caught 2 Pokemon. Now I have Alon and Antoine.
I love
Sure.
that. That's good.
Awesome. So DMing people works. People look at their DM. We live in a crazy world today where you could probably DM someone like, probably not Grant Cardone, but like you could DM some pretty high level people and they are looking at their phones. Like they are scrolling like everybody else. Maybe not for 4 hours a day, but at some point in the day, they are looking at their DMs and they're seeing it. And if you are one of the few people that's sending out a real, authentic message, they're going to read that thing. So you get to earn your credibility. So getting your first guest, I mean, guys, you all have somebody already. Almost all of you are connected to Pace. All of you are connected to Cody. All of you are connected to Matthew Baird, Rochelle Jarvis. Right? If I go through my early episode or find members inside of Sub 2 that are crushing it, hit up Oscar, hit up Dustin. I already got dibs on Dustin though. I already told you guys I'm interviewing Dustin first, right? I interviewed, my very first interview for my podcast when it came on for this was Shireen Dora from inside of Sub 2. Then I had Oscar. Then I had my buddy Justin. Then I had the Donis brothers. So find people that are doing things and go and get them to come on the podcast. Get them to share their experience. And then from there, you'll be able to bump around. You'll be able to leverage that to get more and more and more people on. So any questions on that before I move off of that? Your guests are going to be your number one asset. Recognize very strongly the value you bring to them. Today is a digital age. Brands are important. Social currency, eyeballs. These are the new dollars. Get them more eyeballs. That is how you bring value to people. Bring them eyeballs. Get them attention. That is how you bring value. When you ask them to come on the podcast, they should not feel like they're doing you a favor. They should feel like you're doing them a favor. You're giving them value. You're giving them evergreen material. And as long as you continue to grow your podcast, that's going to be more and more people that find them through your lens. And that's why at the end, letting people know, like if you appreciated this episode, go out and share and go tag the guest. So the guest recognizes like, wow, I came on Christina's podcast and like people have been blowing me up ever since. Give your audience a very direct command. If you got any value from this, please go and screenshot this and tag my guest. Show them that this conversation mattered. DM them. Tell them what your biggest takeaway was. DM me. Tell me what your biggest takeaway was. Because when I get those, when people reach out to me and they're telling me how a podcast episode changed their life, you know what I'm doing? I'm screenshotting that and I'm sending it directly to the guest. Yo, bro, just wanted to say thanks again for coming on the show. Yo, look at this message I just got. Just wanted you to see this. You're out here changing lives. Let's stay in touch. Do we see how this has the ability to be a domino effect? Do we see why it's so important to do these episodes? And now this is going to be one of the final things I talk about. And there's a couple things, but you'll all get that in the text when I send out the book. With these podcasts, you seriously have no idea how much you have the ability to affect people's lives. You can really change the trajectory of where someone is heading. And all it takes was you going, hosting it and pushing it out, clicking a button. Because you're never quite sure where someone's going to be at in their life when they listen to your episode. I'm not going to say the name of this person, but I had somebody that reached out to me, and this is not uncommon. Like I have several stories like this. I had somebody reach out to me after listening to the episode I did with David Avgi. And if any of you didn't hear that story, oh my gosh, you need to listen to David. Like that podcast episode was one of the best episodes I think I ever recorded. And the audio quality wasn't even great, but the value in that conversation was wow. So this gentleman's listening to the podcast, and he's coming from a place where he was up in the mountains. He had been crazy stressed out in his life. He had just quit his job from being just overworked, underpaid, just he's trying real estate. He's not getting any traction with it. He's going into debt. He's new in a town, his family back home. It's like just everything that could go wrong was going wrong. It was all just piling down. Just boom, boom, boom. He literally went onto the mountain and hiked up by himself just to find out what his purpose was, like why he was even alive. Like that's where he was at mentally in that moment. And as he's driving down from this mountain, God, thank God he doesn't kill himself up there. Like he was in a dark, dark place. He's like, let me just listen to something. Let me just listen to anything. Let me just listen to something. He scrolls across my podcast. He scrolls across the episode I've been doing with David Avgi. He listens to how David Avgi came from Israel with his family as a young boy, how they had absolutely nothing, dirt poor. David's still a young guy. He's only 25 years old right now. To this day, he's only 25 years old. He's a high school dropout, drops out at the age of 15. Family still has nothing. He's like, all right, well, since I can't go to school, since I'm a dropout, I'm not smart enough, let me go get work. Realizes how hard it is to get work as a 15-year-old. Decides he's going to become a real estate agent. Somehow they let him work in real estate as a real estate agent. So now he's working as a real estate agent at the age of 15 years old. And as you can imagine how much money a 15-year-old makes in real estate in New York, in one of the toughest markets, he's making nothing. And he's still just gunning at it. He's working his butt off, making absolutely nothing. Gets a little bit older. He's able to pick up little side jobs. So now he's 18 years old. He's working in a bar. He's working in real estate. And he's pulling out credit cards to put himself in debt to go through college. And his parents both get sick. Both of his parents are in and out of the hospital. So it's him supporting his sister, his mom, his dad, going into credit card debt, trying to go to college, trying to be a real estate agent, and is starting to do a little bit as a real estate agent. He's making a whopping $10,000 a year, right? Life is looking great for this young Israeli living in New York, going up against these sharks, trying to get deals done. People are just taking advantage of him, utilizing his free labor. He's just going, getting deeper and deeper into debt. Parents are getting sicker and sicker to the point where mom needs to get her leg amputated. Holy freaking crap. Like, what else can possibly go wrong? Everything is just piling in on this kid. And he still just keeps on going. He just keeps on grinding. He's like, all right, well, like, look, I can stop. I can break down right now, or I can keep going. And he's like, I'm getting upset. But he's like, I know that God didn't put this on me for me to stop here. I know that I'm meant to go for more. I know I'm not meant to stop. Right, working just stupid hours, working Pace Morby hours. That's what he was doing. And he just keeps on going, keeps on grinding. And he finally lands an opportunity by just being persistent as hell to get these development buildings to be a listing broker. He was actually listing deals with other brokers. He found a way to pull through and get on listings with other brokers. And how was he doing it? He was giving them his entire commission. Look, let me just get on the listing. I just want to get on the list. I just want to help. I just want to learn, right? Because he's a smart kid. He was intuitive, right? He recognized, look, if I can get my name on these listings next to these big people, next to the Ryan Serhants and all these other people, and they could see my face next to their face, that's going to be more valuable to me. So he begins to get himself out there. He begins to get his face out there, his name out there, just being persistent, showing up, out delivering value. He would give so much value. He would just pour value. Eventually, someone gave him a break where they gave him some developments to list. So now he's like a 21, 22-year-old kid listing developments in Brooklyn. Developments sell, those are some big commissions. However, after he's doing all the work, the developers try to screw him out of it. They try and tell him, you know what, no, we want to go with somebody else. So there's a long story, and I'm not going to dive into all of David's story. Listen to the episode if you want to find it. But he goes through a story explaining how everything that could possibly go wrong was going wrong for years. But this kid had one superpower where he would just look, and it's like he knew things could always get better. He just knew. He's like, I knew I was going to just my best days are still ahead of me. They haven't come yet. My best days are still ahead of me. I'm going to keep going. My best days are still ahead of me. I'm going to think positively. He was just pouring positive into him. He was reading the books, doing his affirmations, reading the books, saying his prayers, reading the books, showing up each day. So now my buddy that's listening to this podcast, who's coming down from the mountains after being in the darkest place of his life, he tells me, he's like, dude, I literally pulled over because I was crying so uncontrollably that if I had kept driving, I would have crashed the car. I had to pull over so that I can just weep and just get it all out. And at that moment, I knew that I was going to be okay, that I had more in me, that I had more to go, that this is where the story ends. And from that moment on, like, he's just like, literally, he's like, dude, you have no idea, like, that podcast changed my life. That podcast changed my life. He's been back on track. He's rebuilding. He's regrowing. That's the power that we have by putting our stories out there, by sharing other people's stories, by creating the platform, doing that little bit of work to get it out there. Did I know what he was going through? How could I have? We barely even spoke. I barely even knew the guy, like, up until that point. We got connected after that podcast, just from him reaching out to let me know what the podcast did for him. Like, we were somewhat acquaintance, but not really. Now he's one of my really good friends. When I was traveling across the country, I actually stopped to see him, and we had dinner a couple nights. Put this stuff out there. Create the podcast, add the value, figure out why you want to do it, who you want to do it for. And it will grow for you. It will build your brand. It will build a following for you. It will build a network for you. It will bring you more business. It will bring you more opportunities. Build the podcast. It is super, super crucial. So, does anyone have any questions at all about anything? Anything I didn't cover? Anything you want me to go a little bit deeper in about? Anything at all?
Hey, Marlon.
What up, David?
What up? How's it going, man?
Going pretty dang good, bro. Get to hang out with some cool people on a Friday night.
Definitely. Can I make a comment? Or
Please. And thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So I think to Christina or whoever else is asking, reaching out to people is really easier than you think. I've had the guests I've reached out to have had like no problem wanting to be on a podcast, because just like Marlon said, you're giving a compliment, you kind of vibe with them, you want to tell their story, and the fact that you're reaching out to them, no matter what level they are, they feel like a rock star, that you're asking them to be on your show. So it's really that easy. The people I've interacted with, for the most part, I've talked to in person. I have DM'd a couple people, but it's usually I do get a response back. And usually the only reason why, it's just been a timing issue, just because they are so busy in their business and I'm busy in my multiple businesses. So that is really the only reason why we have not connected yet. But other than that, it's just a go out and talk to people. So my podcast isn't real estate specific, it's entrepreneur. So anybody I talk to, I see people, random people, and they look interesting, or they said something and I found them interesting, I'll ask them a few questions. One question leads to another answer from them. And then I somehow work it in that, yeah, I real estate invest and I have a podcast. And I think you have a great story. I would love for you to be on my show, because I think you have a great story. Do you think you'd be interested? I mean, it's literally as simple as that. They go, oh, and a lot of times they've never been asked, unless you're hitting high hitters like Marlon is, but I've interviewed people that are making 7 figures and they're all willing to, jump at the opportunity to spread the wealth and give value. So
David, I love that. I appreciate that that you added that, because that's another thing. You want to talk about a really secret ninja hack here? It's what David's saying. Go about your community and find your local underdogs, your local hidden heroes, right? The guy that's running 12 bagel shops in the neighborhood. That dude's got money. Go share his story. What are you about to get out of that? A cool story, dope connection every time you walk into your favorite bagel shop, and possibly some private money.
Yeah.
Because after the shows, what do we do? So when I stop recording, just like these Zoom meetings, when we stop recording, we hang out and we keep talking. That's where the opportunity is real. You get to build your network so dang quick. So
absolutely. And that's what I've benefited from. I mean, I have a financial advisor down in California who is building businesses for women. I got to interview a nonprofit lady who helps describe I got her to describe how to start a nonprofit if you're interested in that. I got an actor, military person gone turned actor, who's on Hulu right now. So, the next person I'm trying to reach out to is an author of a book. And so really it's endless. And the network and connection that I have with them is probably for a lifetime now, just like Marlon said. So I'll put my podcast, I'll type it in the chat, and I'm actually releasing an episode tomorrow. So shameless plug there.
dude, I was literally just about to ask you, like, what's your podcast for everyone that wants to know and wants to connect?
So mine is Creative Stash Flow. It's on Spotify. It's actually on Apple. I use Anchor. So since this is about podcasts, I use Anchor as my platform, and then it releases it out to 7 different platforms. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, so a bunch of different things. And so I literally release it in one place, and then it spreads it out to all the others. So I've got 5 more to release. I got 5 in the vault right now. So I'm releasing, I'll be probably every week or every week and a half, I'll be releasing one for the next 4 to 5 weeks. And then building on. Marlon's going to be on my show, hopefully.
Yes,
Hopefully he's not too big yet.
It was just that coordinated time, bro. I'll be there, bro. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, but once again, use this community. I've asked Oscar. Once again, it was just kind of a timing issue. He said yes, and then it was just a timing issue. And there's large people out there that are nowhere on really social media, or they're super quiet, but they're killing it in their industry. And that's, you're just out there to meet people. And I'm building capital from this too, building a network, building relationships, and I'm building capital.
It's such a dope thing. Like, I love that. So listen to David's advice. It really is. And I've had David on my podcast too. So if you want to learn more about him, go listen to the episode I recorded with him. Right. And you'll see how he's grown as well. Because even in that podcast, what was cool, because that was a couple months ago too. And you even talked about there that hey, you're creating the podcast and you already see that you've created it and that you've begun to reap the benefits from it. The podcast, everybody should have a podcast. I cannot emphasize that enough. Everybody should have a podcast. You need to create one. It will accelerate everything you do. If you're not leveraging social media, and we didn't even get into the fact that after you make these podcasts, This is where your content comes from. You chop up the podcast. If you have the time to edit it yourself, edit it yourself. If you don't, you go and pay somebody $100 an episode, maybe even less if you want to find like a virtual assistant who does it for like $25 on Fiverr. They will edit your episode. They'll cut up and make like 7 to 10 Instagram clips for you. And boom, now you've got your Instagram clips that will immediately get uploaded to Facebook as well. So now you can promote and share your podcast as well. Make the podcast. And don't wait for it to be perfect. You will figure it out. They will get better. And in the beginning, luckily, you won't have a large following anyway. So no one's even going to hear all the mistakes.
Yeah.
Just get started.
Yeah. I've actually had these recorded for a while, and life got, just other things in life got involved, and I got also a little bit of analysis paralysis, and I was just like, what am I doing? I actually failed my guests by not releasing these podcasts right away. So, but I'm going to be releasing them now. And, I've spoken all of them and said, hey, bad on me for doing that, but they are going to be released. So.
And here's one final cool thing about this, right? I'll say this. Sometimes your worst episodes are going to be your best episodes. I've literally released, it was actually maybe I think 3 episodes ago, I released an episode that I didn't think was like anything like special. Like it wasn't the episode I was the most excited about. Holy crap. I had people reaching out to me. Yo, I needed to hear that. Like this resonated with me so deeply today. Like, thank you for putting that out. And I'm just like, you're kidding, right? Like I literally recorded that in the middle of the night because I couldn't sleep, and like it was just a thought on my mind. No freaking way. Like that, out of everything I did, I flew across the country to go interview Zach Keeves, and that's the one that resonated. Well, hot damn. Like, put it out there. Let the world do what they need to do with it. As long as your intentions are set from the beginning, it's going to be valuable. So
Just go talk to people. That's my thing. Introduce yourself, talk to people, see what they do, be genuinely interested in who they are, and then let them know who you are. Because if you don't tell them who you are, they're never going to know.
exactly. Spot on. So hopefully this was valuable for everybody. I know it's way later than I promised. I said I was going to get you off at 8:30. I decided to start talking about getting guests on and sharing my secrets, and that got me way too excited. So I apologize if anyone was like, bro, you said we're going to get off at 8:30. It's almost 9 o'clock in Arizona. It's 11 o'clock on the East Coast. I am releasing you all. I'm going to drop this recording somewhere. I don't know where that somewhere is yet. It will most likely be on the Facebook group, on the Sub2 group, and I'll probably upload it to YouTube as like an unlisted video. So if you have the link, you'll just be able to go and watch it. I appreciate everybody in here tonight. If you appreciated any of this, the best way that you can share value is 1, go start your podcast. Show me that I didn't just sit here on a Friday night for 2 hours for nothing. Go start the podcast. Ugly, just record it, get it out there, practice recording yourself. It's going to be weird to get used to. And whatever you come up with, release it. Really, the best way to get some feedback on how to make it better is just release it. Practice not really being attached to how everyone feels about it. If you know who it's made for, your goal is to just get it out there for those people. They need to hear it. That's why we started off with, why are you making the podcast? Who are you making it for? Release it for those people. Talk to them. That's how you can show me that this was worth anything. All right. So I absolutely look forward to seeing all of your podcasts. If any of you need any help after this, reach out, shoot me a message. I'm glad to help troubleshoot anything at all, and share it with me. Like when you release your podcast, tag me on like Instagram or Facebook, and I would love to take a listen and blow it up to the best of my ability. So on that note, everybody have a wonderful night. If there are no more questions, I'm going to stop the recording right now.